Australia stamp their authority at Stumps on day one of the World Test Championship final. Travis Head, what a story, what a second coming to the game, what a 100, a first away from Australia's 6th in Test cricket, and he celebrates a partnership of 251 with Stephen Smith, who 5 days after celebrating his 34th birthday is 5 short of celebrating his 31st Test done. It's all Australia and all questions of India to answer in a wicketless final session that keeps Pat Cummins' side firmly in control. We look back at day one on ESPNcricinfo Match Day, powered by Adidas, in the company of Sanjay Manjrekar, who will answer a barrage of questions when it comes to India's selection and their bowling and why it didn't work. But let me first go to Bradley Haddin to make sure he's wide awake. I don't want him to doze off at 3 a.m. in Sydney, but he wouldn't be sleeping if he saw Australia bat like that, Brad.
No, it's been a wonderful day for Australia. A little bit disappointing that last session. I thought India had their opportunities if they could have got the ball in the right area, but it was all about Travis Head, the way he took the game on. They're scoring up around 4 runs and over, and they put the pressure right back on this Indian team, who now we are very surprised they're not thinking about Ashwin. Why haven't we played him? But it's been beautiful batting and total control, aggression from the Australians.
Yeah, so many points in that very crisp opening statement from Brad Haddin that we'll go deeper into. But let me start with the point that he made. It seems like India were just flattened in that last session, Sanjay.
And happens, it's been a long day. They haven't bowled long spells. We were looking at how many overs Shardul Thakur has bowled today. About
he's bowled a total of 18 today.
He's 3 short of the number of overs he's bowled in the whole IPL.
Yeah.
So this is a novel experience for them after a long time. It's a combination of a pitch that's looking a little flat, one all-time great batter playing well, another batter who is a quick scoring player in the form of his life, and the fact that we are playing in England and what started off as a green top, we haven't seen the ball take the outside edge and go to slip even once.
Yeah.
Forget about catchable height or catches drop. Now that is something that never happens in England. In a way, that gives India some hope that this pitch is so good for batting that they can maybe aspire to get a decent score on the board themselves, despite the pressure of big one.
My way. It's hard work getting 400-500 when you're batting second, but Sanjay Manjrekar augurs at least some optimism for India. But the day belongs and the headlines belong to Travis Head, and he is part of our impossible performance by Adidas. All right, lots to like about Travis Head. We did say while you are all focused on David Warner, maybe Stephen Smith and Manas Labuschagne and Usman Khwaja's recent run of form, don't forget what Travis Head can do. And Brad Haddin, let's look back at the innings right from the get-go and how it's finished. It must be a wonderful story too for those that have backed Travis Head. You speak of how important it's been that this team management has backed him. They've seen the best of him on the biggest stage.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful story for the last 24 months, the way Travis Head's played it. But it also took a lot of bravery from the selectors and Paddy Cummins to continue with Travis Head. He plays a really high-risk game, but what it is, it's a really rewarding game for Australia. It's a very similar role to Adam Gilchrist has played in the past, where he comes out and he counter-attacks at number 5. He allows guys like Steve Smith and Manas Labuschagne just to go about their business, not worry about the scoreboard. And today was no different. He was 28 off 20 balls and he finished the day at 146 at nearly a strike rate of a run a ball. So the way he's playing at the moment and the way he counter-attacks this Australian batting has taken their batting to a new level.
There was a lot of hue and cry when Travis Head was left out in India in the first couple of matches on the presumption that he doesn't play spin too well, and on these pitches he might struggle a bit. But people who know Australian cricket, good readers of the game, backed Travis Head. And he came back into the playing 11, had to open the innings towards the end of the series, and I was thoroughly impressed with the way he coped with very unfamiliar conditions. That tells you a lot about a batter, and today we saw the best of him. No sort of out of the way trying to dominate or play risky shots. There's a bit of touch play that he's got. There was a weakness to begin with, people trying to bowl short. We saw a pitch map where the strike rate was 40. I think during the course of the innings, he's also improved on that weakness. That strike rate has risen. So that tells you the quick learning from Travis Head, because he was also looking to pull some short balls, got to 100 with the pull of a short ball. So there's a lot of growth that has happened in this man in this innings alone.
I mean, just following up on the Travis Head story, Brad, must be a nice feeling. First Test 100 away from Australia at this stage. It's a fairly late stage of your international career, and to do it in a World Test Championship final.
Yeah, there's been a lot of question marks about whether Travis Head could play one in India. We've seen when he went to the top of the order over there, he excelled. And the other big question he had to tick was whether he could play in English conditions. He hasn't had the best of form over in England, playing county cricket. Could he handle the Duke's ball moving around? But that all got put to bed today. I thought his footwork was really sharp. He trusted his defence, which is still a big one for me. And they did go after him with short balls for a while, where at stages he looked vulnerable. But when they aimed at his front shoulder, then he looked like he was in a bit of trouble. But if they gave him any width, he used the pace of the ball. And as you said, he started to place pull shot at the back end of the day and started to expand his game. So this is a big 100, not only for this series, but Travis Head's belief that he can do it in all parts of the world.
Yeah.
As far as India are concerned, the window that they had to get Head with that short pitch bowling passed very quickly. Sanjay, could they have done any more after that?
They could have maybe tried that earlier, and that's where we talked about it, thinking on your feet and getting into those plans earlier than scheduled. Maybe that could have helped, but once a batter is set and the kind of confidence that he has, and plus this pitch is not like an English pitch anymore. I mean, there's no seam movement of the deck. There's nothing much happening in the air. That's why I believe India can put on a sizable score. But this is Travis Head's story, and I think there's lots to like about him. Somebody who just plays normally and are able to score at a strike rate of 60 or 70 in Test cricket are a big boom, because they put pressure right back on the opposition so quickly.
And a striker of 94 today. Well, Travis Head says at the end of the day when he was being interviewed that it's a lot of hard work. Don't go by how the scorecard looks, that he had to really work hard for his runs today. So is that just what batters say?
Test batting. At Test cricket, I mean, we've had a long run of T20 cricket, but when I was coming to the studio today, what was I thinking about this format? There are a lot of people, actually, cricket fans, cricket lovers, who come out of the woodwork and start sending messages, very excited about this game, purely because they know that the players that they've watched in other formats will be put to the sternest test. And that's why, he's got 100, it all looks very easy from a distance. But Test runs are hard runs.
146 not out, and it's not even over. So the Adidas impossible performance in Travis Head, well, we could very well see him get his highest Test score. This is his fourth highest. He's got 175 just about a year or so back against the West Indies. So we'll see if Travis Head can get to an even bigger score on day 2. Let's look at the Steve Smith innings, who played second fiddle, which was perhaps surprising to some people. We thought Steve Smith might dominate if he gets in and gets a big score, but he's played his role to perfection. As you point out, Brad, at tea I asked you if he was in control, because it looked like Steve Smith was, the odd ball was sort of hitting him where he didn't want it. He was annoyed by a number of things, including the spider cam coming in his vision. That's typical Steve Smith. At the end of the day, though, that 95 of 227 is just vintage Smith.
Well, that's exactly what it was. And the benefit of having someone like Travis Head who scores at the pace he does is Steve Smith can work his way into the innings. And that's exactly what he did today. He's gone unnoticed, and at the end of the day, he's 95 not out. And we know his appetite once he gets in, Steve Smith, to score big hundreds. But that's all come off the day, off the back of how well Travis Head played and allowed Steve Smith just to play his game, get in his own bubble. He didn't look flustered. There was at times where the spider cam got in his way, but if it wasn't an innings of Steve Smith looking at something else and being flustered with something outside of the game, it wouldn't have been a typical innings. But he was in total control of what he was doing out there today with the bat.
Yeah. And he also shows off every now and then to remind us that when he wants to, he can take Ravindra Jadeja on.
Yeah. Exactly. There are so many facets to his batting, but he is unorthodox. And, we said earlier about how he plays the ball late, how he stays on the back foot, so he's able to get those widths that he plays around with. But on the odd occasion, stepping out to Jadeja tells you one thing that we maybe don't mention as much, is the tremendous self-confidence that he has. We talk about all his idiosyncrasies, but let's not forget this guy has been averaging 60 for a long time. He came to India on those turning pitches and has dropped under 60. So a guy who's been having that kind of a return with his batting in the last few years must have immense confidence. So a lot of the time when he's not in position, what's taking care of, the problem? When a ball is pitched up and he's not in any position, he's on the back foot, open-chested, just the confidence of, finding a way to not get out. So he's been in a zone for a long time, and I'm a huge fan, and the idiosyncrasies and the reactions. When a good ball is bowled, the whole world knows about it, because the moment that ball is bowled, it's like he conveys that to the batter, and there's something that goes on. And every ball, the intensity remains 110%. That's another strength. The focus doesn't drop.
Do you sense that there's an underscored value to those balls? Because 95 of 227 will not probably tell you how many good balls Steve Smith has actually just ensured don't earn a wicket. And by then, I'm sure it has an effect on bowlers as well.
Yeah, I mean, see, to begin with, there are certain things that you try. There was a time when they used to attack, the leg stump, because it seemed like you could see it, and that was an opportunity. But now his technique has changed, where he goes back foot on off stump, but the front foot stays on leg stump, so there's no exposed leg stump to attack with. So he's found a way to make sure that there aren't any weakness, and any positive weakness, that bat just comes down at an angle, again, defying conventional technique and wisdom that the bats have got to come down straight. You'll see a lot of balls that are pitched up on off stump, whereas batters come from gully and have made great contact towards mid-wicket. He doesn't miss that. And again, that is where maybe the hand-eye coordination comes in, and this tremendous belief that I am good, I'm not going to get out. And you find ways to keep the good balls away and runs of the slightly loose deliveries.
And seems to have absolutely no hangover effect of what was, well, a tough series for all batters in India. But that takes us nicely, Brad, to the point you raised at the top. At the end of this day, with how lackluster some of India's pace bowling looked, how does that Ashwin selection look at the end of day one?
Yeah, it just to me looks like they overcomplicated the selection. Ashwin is one of the best bowlers in world cricket. He's been like that for a long time. He loves a contest against Australia. That's one thing he likes a challenge against. And I think they just look like they've just picked a team for the first session of play. Conditions were overcast. Looked like the ball was going to move around, but the forecast is for sun for the rest of the test match. And yeah, it just looks like there's been a bit of overcomplication there with not picking Ashwin, because you just have to think, what would the Australians be thinking? And they would be thinking, wow, I'm so happy that Ashwin's not in this test match. And they missed him today. They missed his energy out there. They miss his competitive edge, and they missed also his quirkiness as well, because he likes to get in the contest with Australia and he bowls big overs.
Gets big wickets, has got Warner many times, has got Steve Smith in the last tour to Australia. We didn't want to give too hard a verdict at lunch on day one, but at Stumps on day one now, does that look like a bad mistake?
Yes, and to be fair, I mean, Pat Cummins also was looking to sort of bowl first on that pitch, so everyone thought there was enough in the pitch to bat first. Sometimes what can happen is that you see a greenish pitch, and we've seen a lot of test matches where the team batting first has collapsed. It happens in India too, where they collapse and get 170, then you bat on day two, which is the best batting day, and then you get a healthy lead on the opposition, and that's how you start dominating the test match. I think that's how India may have visualized it. But if they would have just looked under the green cover, there's a bit of white, dry soil there. But no matter, I mean, we said that at the start as well. This is not in hindsight. Just because the option was Umesh Yadav, and with Shardul Thakur as a third seamer, you had to have your two quality spinners. Also the fact that the batting is slightly diminished with Ashwin not being there. 10 years back, you would have thought maybe, yes, one spinner. But Ashwin in foreign conditions, especially when it's a one-off test match, if you play him the 4 test matches away, you've seen his performances sort of taper off. One-off test match, I mean, he was a walk-in.
This was a foreseeable turn of events, that it could well have been not so conducive to seam bowling, and then the second spinner would have come in. So it doesn't look great.
Still found a way
100%.
To get a wicket.
All right, we've said plenty on this, but one side of the story is they've not picked Ashwin and they've picked Umesh Yadav in a 4-man seamer. The other side of it is, how has Umesh Yadav actually bowled? So let's go into that. We were critical of the lengths they bowled in the morning session, Brad, where perhaps they'd be thinking now, given Australia in a commanding position, 3-2-7 for 3, whether that first session should have yielded 3 or 4 more. How do you break down India's bowlers session by session today?
Yeah, I think if you have a look at the first session, that's where conditions suited Indians' fast bowlers. They won the toss, they sent Australia in, there was overhead conditions, and we've seen that the wicket at times was playing tricks if you got your length right. I think when they go back and analyse what happened today, they probably missed a trick in that first session with their length. They didn't get Australia hitting down the ground enough, playing enough off the front foot, and you just have to look at Davey Warner's dismissal as well. It wasn't one that was really well bowled. It was a sort of a strangle down leg side. So it was one of those sessions where I think they'll sit back and they'll be disappointed they didn't take advantage with that newer ball with that fuller length.
Sanjay?
Yeah, they could ask themselves, why didn't we get edges? And the answer for the first session, well, there were a lot of play and misses, maybe a dozen at least in that first session. Why wasn't there the edge? Because the length was a little shorter. Then maybe first half of the second session that could have been done. India was just finding the right tactics to bowl a little bit too late. They bowled fuller in the second session. The pitch had changed. The batters were more set. So doing the right thing at the right time didn't happen. Another very important thing that I just noticed with the Indian seamers is on the last trip to England when we had the full 4 test matches, we were priding on ourselves on the fact that we had these Indian seamers who were quicker than the English seamers man to man. There was a time when Mohammad Siraj was 140, Mohammad Shami was 140, Umesh Yadav started off being 150, 140. Shardul Thakur has always been a 130. But today, we saw all of them bowling at one speed, and that somewhere must be a little convenient for the batters. There wasn't anyone going at 145, 150 plus consistently. They were more or less in the mid 130 range.
That's a very interesting observation. Let me get Brad's thoughts as a current active coach and why that might happen. I'm sure there'll be questions on whether our bowlers India's bowlers seem to have workload effects after a long IPL. Do we perhaps spend as much time focusing on how important it is for bowlers to adapt from T20 to Test cricket, Brad, when it comes to consistency in length, bowling certain channels? It's not something these guys have been doing the last couple of months in India?
Yeah, the one thing that would have happened, I'd imagine, is a lot of the bowlers would have got their workloads in during IPL, but it's different when you got to back up spell after spell, when you come back for your fourth spell, to be consistent with that pace. And you're 100% right. I was a bit worried also that, especially a bowler like Siraj wasn't up around that 140 mark, intimidating in that first session, because it's only going to get harder now for the Indian bowlers in these English conditions, because the weather's come out, the wicket's nice and flat now. But you're right, there was probably 5K slower, which we could probably put down to maybe lack of preparation in this form of the game because of IPL.
Does it come down to lack of preparation, or the bowler just feeling like it's gotten easier to bat, this is going to be a much longer innings and therefore I must run the marathon, conserve energy?
No, I don't think Mohammad Shami or Siraj or Umesh and even Shardul are those kind of bowlers.
Sure.
This is a one-off test match. They know this is the one test match that you've got to play, and it's the ultimate test. So I guess they were trying their best, but that is the best they could muster up. Maybe again there'll be a discussion. Tomorrow the pitch will get quicker, which means they'll be forced to bowl quicker. There won't be much in the air of the pitch. The one point also that we will watch with some interest is the release point of the seam bowlers. Now we know how the pitch is, but when you look at the Australian fast bowling attack, they will release that ball from a much higher release point, and we'll see whether they can get a little more out of the surface than the Indian seamers did. This is day one, still early days, but they didn't quite get as much as they would have liked from the pitch. Whether the higher release point does something different, we'll have to wait and watch.
All right, we've seen attacks, even the Indian attack, on days where wicket taking is hard, still keep runs down, Sanjay, which is the next best thing the modern day test sides try to do. They've gone comfortably at 4 and over, almost 5 and over. The end run rate is 3.84 on day one. Was there anything India could have done to perhaps control that aspect of the game? It looked like boundary scoring was very easy in the evening.
If you look at the tactics, I think Rohit Sharma was looking for a bowler who was most likely to get wickets. And that's why Shardul Thakur bowled a lot, and he was the most expensive. So I thought India were attacking in a way that they were looking at ways, even if the batter was set, to get them out. Maybe tomorrow they might look at conserving runs a bit. But I'll put it down to the ability of the batters. And today, whatever I've seen of the pitch, the edge is not coming. And that side, square boundary that we look at, which is all pitches, which is hard, leads me to believe that maybe, curbing runs or keeping the run rate down might be a tough thing to do even for Australia if Indian batters, the good Indian batters, get set and start scoring runs. So let's wait and see how that pans out.
Brad, your assessment of the surface then after 85 overs, not 90. That doesn't seem to happen. But I'll come to that in another day. But after 85 overs of play, your assessment of this surface?
I think the surface is still going to have a bit there throughout the game. There's enough live grass there to say if you get the ball in the right areas that there is a bit of movement you can get. But the one thing with the Oval Test match, it's a nightmare when you got two set batters in because how deep the square goes to the boundary. You just got to beat the outfield, and it's very hard to control where your fielders go and shut the scoreboard down when you do have set batters. It's one of the grounds in the world that things do happen fast because if you do notice, there's about 40 wickets on the square, and once you beat that infield, that outfield is absolutely like glass and it's hard to defend. And when you got someone going like Travis Head and Steve Smith in control like he is, it's hard to have in-out fields and yes, look to get wickets, but also shut the scoreboard down. So it's a really difficult oval to defend when you're in.
Even someone like Jadeja, if he had to play a role of just stopping the runs at one end, and he's still gone at nearly 3.5 and over. Now, would you sense that is again down to just conditions not helping him?
Yeah, there was nothing at all for Jadeja. I didn't see him bowl rank loose deliveries. He was doing the Jadeja thing that he does in India. A quick mention also of the ability to play spin, and something Justin Langer mentioned. He's been coach of the Australian team for a while. That the Indian experience of all these Australian batters playing on a tough Indian turning pitches has taught them to play off the back foot a lot more, which he sees as a great sign. And we saw Travis Head also look to play a spinner of the back foot, looking to cut. So let's accept the fact that they've just played spin better as well, and that's made Jadeja's job that much more difficult.
You'd go with that, Brad, or is that perhaps a conversation that would have been better put to the test if they would have had Ashwin playing?
Ashwin obviously would have made life obviously a little bit more difficult with the Australians with the stand he has in the game. But the credit you got to give to also is the Australians do a lot of work now on playing spin bowling. We went over to India. We got some wickets there that were very conducive to spin, and we had spin coming from all angles. You had 3 spinners in the team at the moment, but this wicket now is not offering a lot of spin. Australia, as I said, have not only now jumped down the wicket, but they can use the crease deep. They talk a lot to the players in the IPL about how to play spin, and you just seen that on show there today. Steve Smith looked in total control. Travis has had his difficulties against spin, but he found a way. He used the crease deep. He waited for the ball. And he didn't really get onto the front foot unless they overpitched, but that all came from the way he used the depth of the crease. So credit to the Australians, they're learning how to play spin.
Very parliamentary of you, Brad. Some of the surfaces you saw here were very conducive to spin. Thought from everything I picked up on the stump mic, you'd have a stronger take on what those surfaces were when you played.
I think that though, I think that's the beauty of Test cricket though, isn't it? Where you go over and you play in home conditions. We're seeing that now. This is a typical English wicket. It's got a little bit of grass on it. Overhead conditions play a big part, but that's the beauty of the modern game. When you go to new places, you've got to learn. And Australia, we're seeing the benefit of that's now, and they've got a good wicket, and they've still got quality spinners, but we've got a really solid game plan now to take that on.
All right, fair enough. Now, as I wrap things up on day one, final question to both Sanjay and Brad is at 3 to 7 for 3. We tend to ask the question of whether only one team can win this from here, and have Australia put themselves in that sort of position? Do we tend to see collapses at the Oval that might give us some interest as the test goes deeper? Sanjay?
Yeah, collapses just from whatever we've seen of the pitch doesn't look likely. And the important point Brad also made, and something that we've realized, if there's a partnership that happens, it will score quickly. So if the partnership gets in, and it's easy to get in on this pitch, in India, for example, a wicket would fall and there would three or four. It was difficult for batters to come in and get the first 10 runs. Here, I think it's fairly easier. Still early days to rule India completely out or proclaim Australia as the likely winners. But we'll see how it pans out. The pitch has really settled down nicely for something that started as a green top.
All right, Brad?
No way. I'm not taking India out of this game at all. So we're only day one into the World Test Champion. These are the two best Test playing nations over a long period of time to get to this point. So they're a very proud cricket nation. India, as you know, they'll go back tonight, they'll work out, and they'll come back strong tomorrow. So Australia have got to be at the top of their game. Yes, we're in a great position, but this Indian cricket team will not lie down tomorrow.
So you just heard impacts up by India, Ashwin coming in tomorrow for a seam bowler.
I thought it was only late for Brad in Sydney. It seems like it's getting to you as well. I said it during the IPL, I wouldn't mind the impacts up for Test cricket. Now, don't think of it as blasphemy for the purest form.
That's maybe a topic for run order, because this is a classic situation where a team innocently has picked a playing 11, looking at the pitch, and should they pay a heavy price if that becomes
you're being
kind.
Factor. You're kind. I would like to think that this is the high-paying job that team management selectors are supposed to get right
Brad,
more often than not.
Pitches, tough, isn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, we're talking about Ashwin a lot. I'm surprised that Ishan Kishan didn't play. I think
that's another one.
Yeah, because now I like that Brad saying that, because now you're potentially staring at the other scenario of Australia posting 450, 480, and you might need your best possible batting. And I'm not sure India have get that covered either, Brad.
Well, if he's in the team there, he's obviously his strengths are batting, and he plays a similar role to Travis Head, and then all of a sudden then you can play Ashwin in the team because you're batting depth there. So I think that's for a one-off game a really big selection. Yeah, it's a really interesting one from my point of view.
Yep. All right. You know what, Brad? You've had a cracking debut. As good as Travis Head's day in London has been your debut here. And it's been so good that you really you're teasing us with conversations to extend our analysis show at Stumps.
And every time he's made an observation, I'm thinking, why didn't I go deeper and apply more thought? And I would have maybe said something as impressive as you've done, Brad. So
well done. Yeah. Is that a new feeling for
my
you?
Pleasure.
No? It's an honest feeling. I can expect nothing more than your honest analysis. Brad Haddin, what a pleasure. Now get some sleep, and like you rightly said in your last lines, hopefully you'll be back fresh and ready to go tomorrow, and we look forward to your company then.
Thank you.
Enjoyable day, boys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you to Sanjay and Brad. We will have plenty more conversation around the ultimate test, so join us just after session number 1 on day 2. So right after lunch, right at lunch, we'll be with you for ESPNcricinfo Match Day, powered by Adidas. Download the mobile app. You'll hear from both camps. I'm sure Travis Head will have lots to say as he attends the end of day press conference. And I'm sure some questions will be asked for whoever attends the India side of things on how that Ashwin selection looks. It's going to be a debate that will rage on. Now we'll see how things go on day 2 with Australia in pole position. See you tomorrow.
जिस पे नाम सिर्फ एक का हो
लेकिन हो पूरे देश के नाम,
उस चीज को हाउ डू आई डिस्क्राइब इट इस जर्सी के लिए मेरे फीलिंग समझाना इम्पॉसिबल है
पर इसे पहन के
I feel just one thing, impossible
इज नथिंग